Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it is I, Brother Kenneth, and in yet another episode of The Art of the Deals. In this one, we have a large list of several pages, about 5 of them, completely full. So we're actually scripted this time somewhat. It's a cue sheet. It's kind of a cheat sheet. It's something I wrote about 2013. I probably have more to add, which I will ad-lib on the fly. Red flags to watch for, and demonologists, as they call them in the mainstream. That's what we're called, depending on the work we do, but we do more than that. Deliverance ministers and exorcists, especially exorcists. People are faking archbishop, bishop, and I'm also an exorcist. That's the reason why they do it, because it seems better than a priest. They want the higher ranks. They're flying off the shelves over there at the Universal Life Church, buying your bishop's decree. I have no idea what their gimmick is over there in an exact form. Okay, so you pay $40 and you get a certificate that says you have a doctorate of divinity. I imagine you pay $40 to be an archbishop or bishop. Some of these aren't doing that because they know that we figured out about Universal Life Church. A lot of the churches are already familiar with it. Okay, but we get guys and clowns and so forth on the social media circuit, and their whole goal is to get themselves out there, get all these Facebook friends, promote themselves in every form possible, in every form of social media, so that they can get out there and they can eventually end up on Zach Bagans' show or sit on a stool and tell their paranormal story. And which, by the way, a lot of them made it up because their stories don't align. I'll tell you about that another time. Okay, so number one, of course, is that they made statements publicly, somehow or another, in some form of media. It does not jive, we'll just say, with what's real demonology. It comes from the people who are actually reading Crowley for their knowledge, Keys of Solomon, the Book of Moses or whatever, these things that are actually from Gnostic text. And they more promote ideas, and well, there's no ideas in there that'll help you fight demons. Just make deals with them. Let them leave you alone. How do you get a demon to stop bothering you? You make a deal with them. We don't make deals with devils, okay? Jesus came here. We can kick them out in the name of Jesus Christ out of our life. So the statements can be clear, but you have to be understanding more in what detail this is going to be, and that can be an expanded show on itself and a book. As far as that goes, maybe several volumes, because I'm sure as long as we keep going forth with more and more cases over the additional decades, that we're going to find more of them, and we're going to recognize it enough to bring it up to people as this is what's to watch out for. We've already warned some dioceses and spoke to several of them about fake ones out there, and some other big media companies as well. Number two, they cited knowledge gained from video games or, from entertainment media. For example, demons can't be killed by you. That's true, but Buffy thinks, from the old Buffy the Vampire, that she can drop kick a demon and it's actually going to inflict harm. Like there's a health meter going down like in the video games, like, and then it goes down a little more. You can't do that. Let me just go to say this. The same thing as we said with the demons. It wouldn't be that hard for someone to be scared if a ghost walks across the road and you're driving and you just now notice it, you'll drive off the road and you'll wreck. I mean, a ghost working with a demonic spirit. And don't argue with me about this idea that, oh, no, there's no ghost here. Or they're the souls of the Nephilim wandering the world. They're the only ghosts that are really here. Or something like that. So that's none of these are debatable. I'm not, there's theories is one thing, but this is a short list of things that are very true. You are not fighting demons. We are not fighting demons. It is the heavenly angels and saints interceding on our behalf. You really think that when we say words are running it off because just of what we said? No, an intercession happened there that you can't see that ran it off in the right conditions. Now, they don't like Jesus' name, so that you help to provoke the pain, holding up the crucifix, using holy oil, holy water, and things, in the name of Jesus Christ, which is a sacramental in itself. These things bother it. It torments it. It will help to drive it away. And the lower level ones, at nighttime and sleep paralysis will leave just by thinking Jesus' name and directing your thoughts to it. But the full deliverance is it's not unassisted. You're not a solo. You're not doing it yourself. So that's a very cocky and proud thing to say. Number 3, religious demonologist. This terminology was actually invented by Gerald Brittle. That was actually invented by Gerald Brittle, who wrote the Demonologist, The Extraordinary Careers of Ed and Lorraine Warren, and he wrote to Dublin, Connecticut. That's the story about Deb's horror of the possession and murder and and so forth, is that this title, Religious Demonologist, was fabricated by him to describe the work that Ed Warren did, because he was a little more than just a demonologist, and it was not even that so much. Ed Warren would help other denominations and other faiths. He'd get a rabbi, he'd get a shaman, which I think is totally wrong. I mean, you have one opportunity to get these people to the right path. And if you pass on it, you failed. I don't care if you claim success on delivering a person of a haunted house or possessing demon or anything like that. Religious demonologist is a mainstream term. We have to talk when in Rome as the Romans do. So we use that one, even though it was fabricated. Why religious demonologists? Because when we call ourselves Catholic demonologists, the other denominations who can get help through us and proper direction on the right spiritual path, etc., will kind of avoid us initially. So we kind of round it out a little bit. I don't want to call ourselves Christian demonologists, because what about the opportunity of once they get there, they know what we are. But Jewish and, you name it, Muslim or something like that, we use the same method. It has the same success to some degree. Of course, it's the easiest ones can be, you'd think, the Catholic ones and the Christian ones. But the reality is that's not so, because they might have more issues that need to be unwoven. Each case is unique. Number 4, supposed exorcists that seem to be more about performing the rite in front of a camera and congregations. Exorcism should be a private thing. Yeah, if you notice when you watch Bob Larson on TV, he always has to have the Bible. I guess that's a Bible. It's a little wrinkly small book. And a microphone in the other hand. So he's up there, be gone, demons. He's putting his hand on their head or whatever with this Bible. And something we've talked a few about Mr. Larson, and we don't have anything more to say about that. But that's because it's for show. And they do this at the, Charismatic Renewal Pentecostal, Assemblies of God, at the churches, probably on Sundays even, unless they have a particular time where it's just Deliverance Sunday, where they do that instead of doing a regular service of music and eulogies or sermons or whatever you would call them. Okay, those exorcists who don't know possession from the lower levels of demonization. Well, this is again back to guys like Larson and these other ones, the faith healing ministries, all that. They call it the demon of smoking, and then when it's gone, they say, I delivered him. I did an exorcism on him, and the demon of smoking is gone. Well, that's not a possession, okay? They call it demonization. They call it an attachment. I mean, we can be vexated to be addicted to something. In other words, they're working on it's harder to be depressed, to overeat, to do drugs, to get drunk, to do anything. But it's not possession. It's hardly even any form of something you would call obsession. Well, it does become an obsession, but I mean oppression is what I meant to say. Okay, next one. Do they feel they need to name drop? If you watch their social media accounts, do they name drop people? Especially you can tag people on Facebook, and you can actually get a link for it. If you don't know who the person is, you read up on them after that. But name dropping has been going on for a long time by different types of people who've been trying to promote themselves in this improper way. Number 6, they feel a need to name drop. This is where in social media you bring up certain names to sort of ride your coattails of the person you're bringing up, and it happens to, the names that are considered top names in the communities on a larger scale, not just in the community itself, because that's not that hard to do. There's even like schemes you can do where you can actually buy likes and friends for your list that make it look like it's saturated, and the same thing on YouTube. So on this, the name dropping is basically self-promoting your oneself to be associated. Instead of guilt by association, they're trying to bring up the positive. Like, oh, they know so-and-so. And so don't expect this not to happen, but expect it to happen. And if you talk to the person they're name dropping, they'll probably say, I only met them once. And, they act like they're like best friends, that kind of thing. Expect that. Expect it because, again, their whole promotion most of the time is a narcissistic tendency to want to rise to the top. And sometimes they have their philosophy is no matter what you do, get to the top. Even if there's nothing there when you get there, except, some offers to be on some talking TV show, documentary, docudramas, whatever. And they can do that if they get enough of a reputation by associating themselves with top names, and wrongfully so. But without going into more of that strategy, we continue on. Photo ops is the same thing. They do the same thing. They go to these conventions, and they're very small, by the way. These conventions are nothing like the Marvel Comics ones or some of these bigger ones. they will take pictures with them. Luckily, they don't have to pay money like they do with William Shatner from Star Trek. And they put that up, and it's like, hey, this is my best bud. You know, people straight out ask, and it's like, hey, well, how well do you know him? They might even tell you, thinking that you can't get a hold of this person very easy, so they can't call to validate. Hey, John, hey, is this guy a friend of yours? Well, I just met him a couple times, and that's what they'll tell you when you find out. So, number 8, citing they belong to a prestigious organization. Example, let's see. Number 8, citing that they belong to a prestigious organization. Now, if somebody says that they're a member of the International Association of Exorcists, you know that is only for PhDs that are not priests, and in practicing well-experienced people like Dr. Gallagher, who's in New York. He understands both sides of the coin on psychological and spiritual, partly because of his experience, but he also has the education on both sides. And yes, he is a PhD. Beware of that. It's too easy, because people are using this Order of Exorcists stuff from this fake archbishop like that's their credentials, and they're calling themselves bishop and father, and they look like they just came off the street to collect their welfare. And not to be insulting on anybody who's down in their dumps, but running to a fake priest to try to get from point A to point B without the proper measure of going to seminary and getting the proper training and everything. Remember, the seminary doesn't teach you the stuff that you need to know to be into this work, in this field, demonology and so forth. The stuff that Father Chad has gotten to know on a private study level, at this higher level. There's not like there's a course on this stuff. And you might point out some other denomination has it, but the reality it's just Bible study, because they don't have the fathers of the church, they don't have the writings of the saints, and the experience for that matter, because that's why we see them casting out demons of smoking. Number 9, if they are seeking media attention, this might be a red flag in itself. Look at how they're promoting themselves. That's the way they all start. They'll go all over forums and introduce themselves everywhere. Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, forums all over the web. See, originally when I started seeing this stuff, it was in early 2000, and we just named 3 of these things. Facebook, for example, Twitter, and all these things didn't even exist. Not really. I mean, not for the point it is now. So that's a red flag in itself. So watch their habits. How much are they trying to promote themselves? How much do they turn this into kind of a circus, or it seems like media attention? They're seeking media attention in their hog, and it's like, who are you? You don't even know what they're talking about. And that's what we're talking about earlier on the other one, was that they'll seek media attention. They'll put themselves on all these radio shows with all these props of credentials, which we'll talk about in a minute. And it's all to get them this undeserved notoriety. Okay, so having a pedigree that does not validate one. So they build up a degree or a doctorate, and let's say, okay, Stephen Kaplan was one of the ones who was a big critic of the Amityville House, and Stephen Kaplan had a degree in sociology from Pacific College. I think he got his doctorate, he finished it up there. But that doesn't qualify anybody even for psychology. Sociology, okay, you got your basics in right there. Are you helping people? Are they laying on the couch? Are you counseling people who are having problems with believing they saw their dead grandmother? No, he just turns it into the sort of thing, and he brought witches with him to the Amityville house. So he's just another one of these Fox sisters. He's no different than Hans Holzer or any of these others, trying to act like, he's a scientist, yet he's following all these old pagan notions. We're going to get that too with this fake bishop that used to call himself Archbishop, was basically trying to make excuses for white witches, that's not bad. It's the same person who basically said all demons can't spell, or he said demons can't spell, something along that line. But you can't do that. You can't play halfway and, God to God and then halfway in a demon's hands, or anything like that. Look what happened to Solomon. We tell the story over and over again. It's worse than what David did, what Solomon did. So think about that. You want to break the first commandment and want to try to keep God's commandments at the same time, you're going to break them by doing these pagan practices. Okay, some of these fake bishops, archbishops, they'll cite universities that have closed down, that cannot be located, even have ever existed, thinking that you won't be able to track you down, you'll just give up. Thinking that the rest of their BS stories are actually going to rise above the rest of it, and then you'll be looking at that only. Like if they get established fast enough, people don't even pay attention. I mean, Hollywood doesn't pay attention at all. It's like every bishop, every bishop, priest, or whatever they had on there has been a fake. Every one of them. And you look them up. You know, even the priest that was on there earlier on, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, he was supposedly went to this college and somebody checked up on him and even gave his alternate spellings of his name. They said never heard of him. We don't have anybody even with that name combination who's ever attended there and taken any course whatsoever. So I guess he just kind of... I've known this guy from the past. What he does is when somebody challenges him on a forum, he cuts and runs and he removes himself instead of defending himself. See, it's not hard to run into trolls and then actually be attacked, or somebody who's just asking a legitimate question and saying, hey, why is it I can't locate you? You know, when people want to know someone's legit. And it's not that hard to do that either. Most of the time, you're not going to have to write a university by hand. That's what you used to have to do before 2000. They weren't answering the email in such a way they do now. Now you can even get text. So it's not that hard, people. Look it up, especially Hollywood. You want to make jokers out of yourself? You want us to take you seriously? Quit putting fake priests, bishops, and archbishops on there. They're not validated. And they're not going to work either because they get hot scratches. They don't get a job done successfully. So you're going to have to trust the acting skills of everybody in the crew to actually act better possessed or something like that. Because a lot of people aren't going to buy that because this thing with this documentary about this house where the Indiana boy was walking up the wall, and then they go in there and start dealing with that. There's terrible acting in there. There's a guy looking at his hands, cameraman. It's like we're supposed to think now he's becoming under possession. Guys, watch way too many teenage-made horror movies. All righty. So, the track record can indicate real or not. I basically call them TV people. If they handle a case that the person is now far worse and still plagued by a haunting. Look at this. We get these numbers from people who... we call, or they call us, and they tell us that they worked with this person and they didn't get anything done. What I mean is it's not the person being fake, because someone who just wants attention is not going to find an answer anywhere. This guy that calls himself Archbishop, back then he was calling himself Archbishop or Bishop, I can't remember. For some reason, he shook off the arch part with no explanation whatsoever. So it's pretty bad. Laity in the Roman Catholic Church is better than any so-called archbishop or bishop or priest from another church outside, our big three, the FSSP, the SSPX, and the Roman Catholic Church. It's a reality. I watch it. If I take all these cases and bundle them all together, and then I do a chalk mark statistic, we're going to get that as a statistic. That's what we're citing. We're not making this stuff up. So if you're a Protestant and you want deliverance done, go to the Catholic Church, because it's not going to be as powerful, it's not going to be as quick, it's not going to be as effective, it's not going to be long-term like it would be if you went to the Roman Catholic Church. But you can't go back to where you were before. And that's a key right there. See, we say that stuff, and then people say, yo, you're really hard on some people. It's like, well, what am I going to do? It's like I'm going to be Mr. Nice Guy. Jesus said that, you're going to be hated because of me. Well, I'm going to be hated for telling the truth, so be it. Okay. Well, notice that lifestyles of sin, I mention this because sometimes if you look closer at them, it's like a divorced archbishop. He got divorced from Reverend Mother, supposed wife, who he never told was his wife. Had the same last name as him when he and her were playing doctor, like they were parapsychologists. So he gets married to somebody else, and we're supposed to think that's all cool. And everything's back to normal again. Or now he's suddenly legitimate because he got married to a different girl that wasn't a so-called leader of the orders they made up in 2012. We talked about this clown on some other cases right now, and that's definitely a giant red flag there. Lifestyles of sins can also be, how about Rasputin? You remember Rasputin? They considered him a holy man, even though he frolicked with prostitutes and he was a drunkard and the least, just that. Well, it sounds like he was an alchemist and these other things as to, they killed him and lied. Just because it's one thing. Didn't he cure the daughter of the Russian prime minister? And Rasputin helped to bring down that royal family, which brought in what? Communism. Okay, so we learn from the past, don't we? Okay, another thing we call in number 15 is it's a nickname, Solomonites. That just means Solomon followers. The people that read the Book of Enoch, but they go for this old text, acting like the church is lying to them, and they act like they discovered some sort of secret, and only they know, of this conspiracy or whatever, and it goes ridiculous and long. But like I said in the early part of this thing, when they go for this kind of demonology that is from the perspective of demons and Gnostic text, that's a red flag immediately, because no mentor would allow anybody go on that path. Even if they asked about it, they would stop immediately to go with what their spiritual director says. And it usually means they're non-denominational too, because you can't go solo. And then when I was mentioning earlier about when people wrote articles back in early 2000 and earlier, they wrote about the names of demons. They become obsessed with it. I ran into a guy putting up YouTube videos one after the other, and I warned him. I said, what you're doing here? You're putting up this stuff, and this is details probably from demons and not from some reliable source. That they were going A to Z, they thought, by putting the names of demons and describing what he does. You're creating fans out of people over demons. You're creating an unhealthy curiosity. So stop. We talked about it. Watch my video where I talk about demons' name. I didn't even go into that story about that. But we cannot obsess over demon names. We do not use demon names in set prayers. It's only for the exorcist, when he actually extracts it during the Roman ritual, that he can use it, and probably will, if he believes that that's the demon's name. The actual name of the demon, it's not going to mention its generals. I don't like saying their names, and you shouldn't say them. But when they get their actual name, they can kick them out so much easier, and that's the last thing in the world they want to do. Just as it seemed to be really difficult to get it out in that movie, they're right. That was an accurate portrayal. They're going to probably yell it out. It's going to be painful. Okay, the number 17. We've seen this, believe it or not. To what extent a 15-year-old going to be an ordained minister? What denomination is that all about? People under 23. There's some guy online, whatever his name was. I guess it's not important. That's how memorable they are. He started this so-called ministry, and he was only like 23. He used to be a used car salesman. Watch out for the previous occupations sometimes. Okay, so that's definitely a red flag there too. I would say even people that are too young to have the experience and the qualifications on other levels, not just being young and immature. Remember, bishops have to be over 33. The one archbishop I talked about, who later called himself a bishop, he was calling himself a bishop at about 30. So we all thought that was kind of weird right there, even though he had thinning hair for his age. That was a red flag way back then. Of course, been corrected by default because he gets older as the time marches forward. Okay, so charges for services. Larson is notorious for this. We're getting other people out there, Bill, and who else is charging right now? People in a smaller community and more smaller known, even though they've been on TV, they're charging for services. Part of it because they turn it into a celebrity turnout, like having a guest speaker, and then you got to pay big bucks to have them speak because they're more well known because they were on a TV show on the Discovery Channel or something like that, like the psychic medium Long Island or whatever. Instead of just, like people don't go to readings, all right? But if you go to her, and instead of getting the normal reading price, you're going to get a much higher one, and you're going to want a picture with her and all this other stuff. So that's part of what we call the paranormal circuit, and that's what they're going for. But the charge of services means they're in it for the money. Like if they start an organization and start charging for memberships annually and other things. How about dinner and deliverance? That was pretty cheap though back then. This is before you got greedy. It was like $45 or something like that. But I'm saying, why don't you just give the deliverances for free? And then you give them, right before the deliverance, you give them dinner. What if they have a sign of departure and they barf it all up? That's going to be a messy stage. I don't know how many people showed up, but those kind of events usually only have like 100 people. It's like me having a lecture on last minute notice at a library. I'm not going to get more than 100 people. But you promote yourself, and you will get, if you're well known. Okay, riding the coattails. We mentioned about this before. Riding the coattails is the whole point of people wearing the Roman collar, calling themselves bishop, archbishop, father, this or that, is because the coattails of the Roman Catholic Church is pretty strong, especially the infectious idea that I can be a priest like the one me in The Exorcist. So they have that seared into their mind, and most of them are about old enough to have saw that when they were too young, and to scare them out. You could say my age, 10 years younger or something, even if you saw it many years later and it wasn't at the theater. I can't believe parents took them to that stuff. I didn't see it that way. I heard about it when I was younger, and kids were scared. But it gives us a very concrete example that this guy's a priest, he's an exorcist. The two of them go together. Exorcist, Roman collar, he's father, he's bishop, he's archbishop, and that he's going to bring the tools, the crucifix. Some people doing this kind of thing like, hey, do an exorcist pose, like Bob Larson does. And so they're writing the coattails, basing it on the long-standing reputation of the Roman Catholic Church. And that is quite a bit. And that's the point of it, too. And they want people to automatically think they're associated with the Roman Catholic Church because they know people don't do their research. They know they don't do the research. Hollywood doesn't. Most people don't. And they get mad at you, too, when you start saying this guy's fake. No, he's not. But I think we'll end it right about here. So I am Brother Kenneth saying good night. Have a good evening. Have a good morning. Have a good day. For the Art of the Deals, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notifications button, share, etc., etc. See you next time, or rather, you'll see me.